hose dragger, hose jockey, hose monkey. They too like their hoses. Hydrant humpers, fire fairy, smoke eater, basement savers, cat savers, armchair heroes, nozzle jockey, ladder lovers, Xbox experts, guys who think they look like Kurt Russell in Backdraft, but you don't. Whackers, and by that I mean the guys that have the lights on their personal vehicle that are actually brighter and there's more of them on their truck than on the actual fire truck. Look at me, I feel like a cop.
I got you. Yeah, I will defend my brothers. I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite. Bring it on. It's time to fight.
Many of my firefighter friends would say that firefighters exist because even cops need heroes. Even though there's this sibling rivalry that goes on between cops and firefighters, what if I told you there were situations in which cops actually become firefighters? Now, some, if not most, police officers have at least fire extinguishers in their patrol vehicles, and some even try to help where they can, like this cop, which, God bless him. But that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Cops usually will block the street off for the firefighters and stand back and watch and do crowd control maybe, but they're usually not interested in trying to fight the fires. At the end of the day, we're actually on the same team, and I have known firefighters to step in and back up cops, in situations where they need it, and I've seen police officers go into dangerous situations, probably at great risk to their own lives, to save people in the situation where they're in a fire or smoke and the fire department wasn't able to be there yet. But what I want to talk about today is, even though I've mentioned this in other videos, I have actually had experience in being both a police officer and a firefighter. Not separately, but literally at the same time, at the same department. Allow me to explain. In the state of Michigan, they have what are called public safety departments. And I do believe that some departments have changed their name to public safety to soften the militarization or the perceived militarization of police, and it sounds nicer. Public safety. And in Michigan, most of these public safety departments actually are both police and fire. When I was in the police academy, the first job that I transitioned to from the police academy into full-time police work was at a public safety department. So how that worked is that I started on the road as a police officer. The department had police and fire together. I was not fire certified or trained yet. They did some training in-house, and once I passed the field training program and probation for the police side of things, they sent me to the fire academy, which was full-time for 9 weeks, I believe it was. And you take the state test there, and I was a certified firefighter.
Hey, need some more water pressure over here! This basement's not gonna save itself!
Here, Mike, have Snickers.
Why?
Dude, you're just not acting like yourself today. Better?
Better.
How did that work, you would ask? Well, first, I'll tell you, it was so interesting to actually drive around in a patrol car, and then you kind of had that situation where you're like, hey, how are you, sir, ma'am? Screw you! Because sometimes people don't necessarily like the public safety officer. Yet I distinctly remember the first time I was just out driving the fire truck, and I had to log so many hours driving to get my certification to drive the truck, and everybody would wave, moms, grandmas, people were wheeling other people out of houses, to wave at the fire truck. People wanted to buy me ice cream. It was crazy. Everybody was so nice to the firemen. So I've definitely seen the differences in real life. On the day-to-day, I just want to kind of explain to you how it worked. So at that particular department, we would have, let's say, a lieutenant, a sergeant, 4 or 5 guys on the road, and then 2 guys inside. Now, the 2 guys inside were in charge of the ladder truck and the engine truck, checking to make sure that they were working right and everything was ready to go. And in the event that there was a fire call, they would drive those to the scene. Someone from the road would come in because we would have prisoners inside, and those 2 guys normally would take lobby reports and handle stuff inside, babysitting prisoners and feeding them and all that stuff. and then they would switch. One guy from the road would come in during a fire call to make sure that that was handled, and the two guys that drove the trucks would go to the fire scene. Everybody else on the road actually had their fire gear in the trunk of the patrol car. So one person would drive to the scene and start assessing it. The next person would drive to the next closest hydrant to where the fire was occurring, and they would obviously prepare that and then start getting their turnout gear on. Everybody else would show up. Everything was ready to lock and load with the hoses, and then either the attack or the defense in the fire. If you're a firefighter, you know about the inside lingo. And overall, it was a pretty smooth operation. From a taxpayer standpoint, from a citizen standpoint, you're getting pretty good service. You're not paying for a police department and a fire department. You're paying for a public safety department, and all of that works together. Now, there would obviously be its disadvantages too, because that only works when there's not a lot of fires. So if you're only having a handful or a dozen or whatever fires a year, then that works because the workload isn't crazy. Now you go someplace like the city of Detroit proper, or all kinds of major metropolitan areas where there's fire calls so often that you would never actually be able to proactively patrol as a police officer. Well, that's a different story. So that's not a solution that would work for everyone, but for the departments that employ that, for the cities that have that, it's actually a pretty good solution. Now, not every public safety department works that same way. Some will have dedicated firehouses, and they'll have a rotation where you're working at just the fire side of things, and then other people will work just patrol for the police side of things. There's that method. There's also some that work on the 24-hour cycle, where they work basically like a firefighter schedule, and then for 8 hours they're working the road and patrol. For 8 hours they're actively working, on medical runs and fire stuff, and then 8 hours of sleep time, and they would only get woken up for an actual fire call. So there's different ways that it happens, but for as much crap as goes back and forth between police and fire, it's usually good-natured and all in good fun.
Hey, Dad, can I tell you something?
Sure, buddy, what's up?
I want to be a firefighter.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
I always love it when people have actually gotten mad when I make jokes about firefighters and I put up certain memes or something, and people get triggered. Firefighters get triggered thinking that I'm just dogging on firefighters, and it's always funny when they tell me that I was going to end up as a police officer because I failed the fire academy. It's always interesting because, well, I went to the fire academy and I didn't fail. That's public safety. That's when a cop becomes a fireman. So, and there's actually a lot of cops that do volunteer firefighter work in their communities. Over 70% of all firefighters in the country are volunteers. So that it's actually a more common thing than maybe people realize. So I figured I'd just kind of tell you that little story and have fun with the Cops First Firefighter thing. So that's it. That's all I got for you. Drop nasty comments below. Who's going to get pinned today? Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button for my channel. If you want to find me off of YouTube, you can always add me on Snapchat, follow me on Instagram or Twitter, like my Facebook page, and if you really like me, you can also check out my store or my Patreon page.